In the beginning, God. Clear and expressive are these words. In the beginning, God only. No manifest universe, no system of planets, nothing of form or life, of brute or man. God was the spirit of all that was to be, but he had not yet moved upon the waters. Then this all-being moved, or began to create. Where did spirit move? Upon what did it move to create? Where did it get a pattern? What means or power did it employ? Through what agencies did it work? In short, what is the world, ourselves included, made out of? And how did we and all else come into being? These questions correctly answered would solve the problem of being and set men free. Let us consider. The Spirit was all. There was nothing else but itself. All-inclusive, everywhere, infinite. This all-spirit could not have had the impulse to move unless it were self-conscious. Therefore, the Spirit is the power that knows itself. It is accordingly all-knowing as well as all-present. Being one, undivided, whatever it knows all over instantly. We find then that the Spirit operates through self-knowing. It moves, and that inner movement must be one of infinite power, moving upon itself, since it is all, and with a definite purpose. The Spirit then moves upon itself and makes out of itself all that is made. In other words, what we see comes from what we do not see, through some inner intelligence at work, which knows there is no power but itself. The things that are seen are not made of the things that do appear. The only possible operation of intelligence is thought, or the Word. So all things were made by the Word, and without the Word was not anything made that hath been made. How simple the process of creation when we understand it. The Spirit speaks, and since there is nothing but the Spirit, and it is all power, it has only to speak, and it is done. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. From the Word, then, comes forth all that appears. Each life, human or divine, each manifestation is a different kind of word coming into expression. The great fact to dwell upon is that Spirit needs nothing to help it. It is self-conscious and has all power and all ability to do whatever it wishes to accomplish. It operates simply by speaking. It is hard to get a clear concept of this great ceaseless cause, this something from which all things come. At times, we get into a maze of confusion when we attempt to realize what the Spirit means. It is then that we should think of it as the great reason behind everything. Being all knowledge, it must know itself, and must know everything it creates. So it knows us, and it knows everyone. Since it is all presence, we can contact anywhere, and will never have to go to some particular spot to find it. As it is all-knowing and operates through the power of the Word, it knows everything we think. Just how it creates, we cannot know, and need not attempt to understand. For whatever this process of creation is, we find it is always an inner thought process. We should keep this in mind. The Spirit makes all things out of itself. Everything comes into being without effort, and when we exert ourselves, we are not in accord with the creative Spirit in the way in which it works. The impulse of the Spirit to move must be caused by a desire to express what it feels itself to be. Beauty, form, color, life, love, and power. All things else we find in the manifest universe are attributes of the Spirit. and are caused to spring into being through the Word, because the Spirit wants to enjoy itself. We find then that the Word, which is the inner activity of thought, comes first in the creative series, and all else comes from the effect of the Word operating upon a universal substance. If the Word precedes all else, then the Word is what we are looking for. And when we get it, we shall have what the world has sought from time immemorial. We must, if we wish to prove the power of the Spirit in our lives, look not to outside things or effects, but to the Word alone. The human eye sees and the human hand touches only that which is an effect. Unseen law controls everything, but this law also is an effect. Law did not make itself. The law is not intelligence or causation. Before there can be a law, there must be something that acts. And the law is the way it acts. It is intelligence. In the beginning was the Word. This Word, or the activity of the Spirit, is the cause of the law. And the law in its place is the cause of the thing. And the thing is always an effect. That is, it did not make itself. It is a result. The Word always comes first in the creative series. The Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the Word still is God. When we realize that man is like God, and he could not be otherwise, being made out of God, we will realize that his Word also has power. If there is but one mind, then it follows that our Word, our thought, is the activity of that one mind in our consciousness. The power that holds the planets in their place is the same power that flows through man. We must place the Word where it belongs, whether it is the Word of God in the universe or the Word of man in the individual. It is always first, before all else, in the beginning. The real sequence is this: cause, Spirit, intelligence, God. The Word, the activity of intelligence. The effect, or the visible thing, whether it is a planet or a peanut. All are made out of the same thing. What we need to do is to learn how to use the Word so that all will come to see that they are creative centers within themselves. A principle that can be proven. Knowing that mind is, we have a principle that is absolute. It is exact. It is going to correspond to our thinking about it. The first great necessity is to believe this. Without belief, we can do nothing. This is the reason Jesus said, "It is done unto you even as you have believed." Always it is done unto people as they believe. And there is something that does it, which never fails. We must believe that our Word is formed upon and around by this creative mind. For instance, we wish to create activity in our business. We believe that our Word is law about that thing, and there is something that takes our thought and executes it for us. If we have accepted the fact that all is mind, and that the thought is the thing, we shall see at once that our Word is the power behind the thing, and that it depends upon the word or thought that we are sending out. See Creative Mind and Success by the author. So plastic is mind, so receptive, that the slightest thought makes an impression upon it. People who think many kinds of thought must expect to receive a confused manifestation in their lives. If a gardener plants 1,000 kinds of seeds, he will get 1,000 kinds of plants. It is the same in mind. The Word going forth. Since this is true, everything depends upon our mental concepts. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. The Bible reiterates this statement, telling us many times of the creative power of thought. Jesus taught nothing else. He said, "The words which I speak unto you, they are spirit, and they are life." The centurion coming to Jesus recognized the power of the word spoken by the latter. He said, "I also am one in authority." but his authority was on the physical plane, and he saw that Jesus had authority on a spiritual plane, for he said, "Speak the word only." The Bible also tells us that the word is not afar off, but in our own mouth. It is neither here nor there. It is within every living soul. We must take the responsibility for our own lives. All must awake to the facts that they have absolute control over their lives and that nothing can happen by chance. Then they will have a broader concept of God, a greater tolerance for their neighbor, and a greater realization of their own divine nature. What a relief from strenuous labor. No more struggle or strife. Be still and know that I am God, and beside me there is none other. The Spirit being all there is, we cannot conceive of anything that can hinder its working. When the Spirit has spoken, the Word becomes law. For before the law is the Word. It precedes all else. First is absolute intelligence, all power, all presence, all causation. Then the movement upon itself through the power of the Word. Then the Word becoming law. The law producing the thing and holding it in place. So long as the Word exists, the thing will exist. For since the Word is all power, there is nothing beside it. I am that I am, and beside me there is none other. This I am is Spirit, God, all. There is no physical explanation for anything in the universe. All causation is spirit, and all effect spiritual. We are not living in a physical world, but in a spiritual world, peopled with spiritual ideas. We are now living in spirit. God, or Spirit, governs the universe through great mental laws that work out the divine will and purpose, always operating from intelligence. This intelligence is so vast and the power so great that our human minds cannot even grasp it. All that we can hope to do is to learn something of the way in which it works, and by harmonizing ourselves with it, to so align ourselves with Spirit that our lives may be controlled by the great harmony that obtains in all the higher laws of nature, but has been very imperfectly manifested in man. This brings us to the second point of consideration. Why and what is man? We find in the physical universe that automatic laws govern everything. For instance, the tree cannot say, "I will not," because of the law that holds it in place. It grows without any volition of its own. So it is with all nature, but when we come to man, we find a different manifestation of the Spirit, a being who can say, "I choose." In all creation, man alone is an individual. Man alone is free, and yet man alone wants, is sick, suffers, and is unhappy. Man marks the earth with ruin. Why? Because he has not found his true nature. The very thing that should free him, and eventually will do so, now limits him. God could not make an individual without making him able to think, and he cannot think without bringing upon himself the results of his thought, good or bad. This does not mean using two powers, but using the one from two standpoints. Nothing in itself is either good or bad. All things exist in mind as a potentiality. Mind is eternally acting upon thought, continually producing its own images from mind and casting them out in the manifestation. Man must be the outcome of the desire of the Spirit to make something which expresses the same life that it feels. Man is made to be a companion of the infinite. But to arrive at this exalted plane of being, he must have his freedom and be let alone to discover his own nature, to return love to his Creator only when he chooses to do so. At the doorway of man's mind, this wonderful God has to wait. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. The opening must be on the part of the individual. Man lives in a mind that presses in upon him from all sides with infinite possibilities, with infinite creative power. The divine urge of infinite love crowds itself upon him and awaits his recognition. Being the image of this power, his thought also must be the Word, or calls it the life. At the center of his being is all the power that he will need on the path of his unfoldment. All the mind that man has is as much of this infinite mind as he allows to flow through him. We have often thought of God as far off, and of man as a being separate from the all-good. Now we are coming to see that God and man are one, and that the one is simply awaiting man's recognition, that he may spring into being and become to man all that he could wish or want. As the Father has inherent life in himself, so hath he given to the Son to have life within himself. It could not be otherwise. We are all in mind, and mind is always creating for us as we think. And as we are thinking creatures, always thinking, our happiness depends upon our thought. Let us consider the law of our life. The path to prosperity. The healing of conditions is no different from other healing. All healing is the constructive use of a mental law which the world is gradually beginning to understand something of. Again, we must reiterate the principle of all life. We are surrounded by a thinking medium from which all things come. We think into it. It does the rest. Since we are thinking beings and cannot stop thinking, and since creative mind receives our thought and cannot stop creating, it must always be making something for us. What it will make depends absolutely and only upon what we are thinking, and what we will attract will depend entirely upon our holding thought to the complete exclusion of all that would contradict it. It is not enough that we should sit down and say, I am one with infinite life. This must mean more than mere words. It must be felt. It must become an embodiment of a positive mental attitude. It is not claiming something to be true which is going to happen. It is not sending out an aspiration or a desire or a supplication or a prayer. It must be the embodiment of that which knows that now it is. This is more than holding a thought. Our ability to attract will depend upon the largeness of our thought as we feel that it flows out into the great universal creative power. We are dealing with the form in thought and not with the form in matter. We have learned that when we get the true form in thought and permeate it with the spirit of belief, we will see the thought made flesh without any further effort on our part. Thought can attract to us only that which we first mentally embody. We cannot attract to ourselves that which we are not. We can attract to the outer only that which we have first completely mentally embodied within, that which has become a part of our mental makeup, a part of our inner understanding. A man going into business will attract to himself that which he thinks about the most. If he is a barber, he will attract people who want to be shaved or have their hair cut. If he sells shoes, he will attract people who want to buy shoes. See Creative Mind and Success by the author of the present volume. So it is with everything. We will not only do this, but we will also attract as much of anything as we mentally embody. This is apt to be overlooked in the study of metaphysics. It is not enough to say that we attract what we think. We become what we think, and what we become, we will attract. Do not become merely sentimental about this. Your life is governed by more than a sentiment. It is governed by law, something that cannot be broken, something that picks up every mental attitude and does something with it. This fundamental proposition of the law should then work out into our conditions. Always remember that it does just as we think. It does not argue. It simply does the thing as we think it. Now, how are we thinking? Never ask a patient how he is feeling. Ask, how are you thinking today? This is the only thing that matters. How are we thinking about life and our conditions? Are we receiving the race suggestion? Are we saying that there is not enough to go around? If we are saying this, it is our belief, and there is something that will see that it becomes a part of our expression. Most people, through ignorance of the higher laws of their being, are suffering from the thoughts imposed upon them from a negative and doubtful world. We who are claiming the use of the greater law must emancipate ourselves from all sense of limitation. We are not to be governed by the outer confusion, but by the inner realization. We are to judge life not from the way that things in the past have been done, but from the way that the Spirit does things. The law of our lives. Spirit creates through law. The law is always mind in action. Mind cannot act unless intelligence sets it in motion. In the great universal mind, man is a center of intelligence, and every time he thinks, he sets mind into action.